Hello, everybody. Hope everybody is doing as well as possible. And I want to get you guys ready for the exam next week. And to do that, we're going to go over the study guide for exam 4. And remember, our exam is next Thursday, the 7th, from 10:30 to 11:30. You got to start at 10:30. You got to be there for that. And it's important, especially if you've missed another test. Can't miss this one. Can't miss the final, which will be about a week and a half later. Actually, 2 weeks later. All right, so let's go over the study guide. So it's mostly going to be moon stuff, mostly moon. But there's still going to be a little bit about meteoroids. Good to know what a meteoroid is. It's good to know what a meteor and a meteor shower is. And it's good to know what a meteorite is. And know the difference between those three. Might be 1 or 2 questions about that. There it is, the differences. Discuss the differences between a meteoroid and meteorite. Types of meteorites. Go over the types of meteorites we talked about. Go over, like, what's the most common? What's the least common? I may have mentioned a couple of them, maybe one I really wanted to have, a big piece. I think hopefully you remember that. We talked about ones that were found at maybe Meteor Crater in Arizona. What type? Talked about what a lunar and Martian meteorite were. What type were those? There'll be maybe 3 or 4 meteorite questions. Delay in moonrise, moonset, which means that if the moon rose at, let's say, 8 o'clock p.m. today, what time would it rise tomorrow? Well, the rule is you add 50 minutes, 50. So if it rises at 8 times today, it will rise at 8:50 tomorrow. So if it rose, let's say someday at, let's say 3:10 in the afternoon, the next day it rises at 4. Just add 50 minutes if I ask a question like that. And there will be a question like that. Now explain why the moon goes through phases. Identify the phases of the moon and draw a diagram explaining these phases. I'm going to give you a diagram on this test. And it's going to have the Earth. It's going to have the moon at different positions around the Earth as it's orbiting. It's going to label the moon, kind of like we did in our lecture. And it's going to show where the rays of the sun are coming from, the direction of the sun. And you're going to have to figure out, if I say, okay, what phase is this? And I point to, phase number, let's say, 2 there. And phase number 2 happens to be a crescent. You would just pick crescent as the answer. If it happens to be, point to where a full moon would be. You have to know that would be a full moon. There'll be like 5 questions like that. So that's this homework, this last homework that you hopefully did. Homework 9. The moon, and I just posted also the answers to that too, so you can take a look at the answers. That's a really good homework to look over for this test. Times of moon rise, set, meridian crossing are the highest point in the sky. So if I say if the moon is full, what time would it rise? What time would it set? What time would it be as high as it gets or crossing the meridian? So that's good. Those are good questions to practice for the homework. If the moon is first quarter, what time would it set? What time did it rise? What time would it be as high as it gets? So those are really good ones to practice. There'll be like 3 or 4 of those questions on there. The mass of the moon. Well, don't worry about that. I didn't have a really chance to go over that in a diagram. Don't worry about that. The distance of the moon. How we figure out the distance of the moon. That's good to know. It's good to know just how we figure it out. The most accurate way that we determine the distance of the moon. We did talk about that. The rotation of the moon. It's a special rotation of the moon. What kind of rotation is this? Remember, we only see one side of the moon, the near side. The moon's orbital plane relative to the ecliptic. The moon is tilted by about 5 degrees relative to the ecliptic. So that's a good number to know. That's why we don't have eclipses every month. Types of months. We talked about a sidereal and a synodic month. The sidereal is a month, which is the period of time it takes the moon to orbit Earth with respect to the stars. And that's about 27 days, 7 hours. A synodic or a solar month is the period of time it takes the moon to orbit the Earth with respect to the sun. And that's the cycle of the phases. That's 29 days and 12 hours. And that would be the time from full moon to full moon, 29 days, 12 hours, from first quarter moon to first quarter moon, from new moon to new moon. It's the cycle of the phases. That's 29 days, 12 hours, synodic month. Tides. Be able to tell me the difference between a spring tide and a neap tide, and what phases of the moon Would you need to have a spring tide? What phase of the moon would you need to have a neap tide? Space program. It's good to know the space program. The main, so we talked about the Mercury series, the Apollo's Mercury series, the Gemini series, Apollo series. So it's good to know a little bit about those. Also about, you know, who was the first, let's say, what was the first satellite into space? Whose satellite was that? Was that ours? Was that the USA's? What about the first animal into space? Who was that? Was that an animal from the U.S., somewhere else? What about the first person into space? What about the first American into space? Should know things like that. What about the first person to orbit Earth? What about the first American to orbit Earth? Who was the first woman in space? These are good things to know. And so Apollo mission. Who was the first on the moon? You should know that. Who was the second on the moon? So you got to know about especially Apollo 11. Know how many Apollo missions landed people on the moon. Know how many people on each mission set foot on the moon. Those are good things to know. We talked about that in the lectures. So space program, very good to know about the space program. Eclipses, types of shadows. We talked about umbra, penumbra, what the antumbra is. So be able to understand those types of shadows. We talked about types of lunar eclipses and circumstances for a lunar eclipse. Remember, you need a full moon for a lunar eclipse. We talked about penumbral, partial, and total. We talked about the worst type, the type that was horrible because it can't even tell that eclipse and a regular full moon. There's not much difference as far as the brightness of the moon. But we're talking about a really good type of a lunar eclipse. And we talked about ones that you can see coming up, solar eclipses. We talked about partial, total, and annular. And so we talk about the best type, the type that you need to see. For extra credit, I'm going to give you some. Total. You can't describe what a total looks like. Make sure to look through that lecture of total solar eclipses and explain why they're not eclipses each month. Just know, well, there's a 5-degree tilt between the moon's orbital plane and the ecliptic plane. That's all you need to know. Don't worry about eclipse seasons. Cross that off. And this this material, the sun and its parts, that'll be on the final. This material will be on the final. Don't worry about that for exam 4. So on the final will be maybe 5 questions from the sun right over here on the final, plus about 35 questions very similar to the subjects we've already talked about. So make sure also to read the tidbits for this next exam and for the final. There's just some tidbit questions you need to know for the final, not all of them, just it says it on the syllabus. Also, the last day to turn in all the extra credit is on the 7th, the day of this test, exam 4. And let me know if you have any questions. Email me, probably best way to contact me, or through Canvas. So good luck. Let me know if you're having troubles with anything. Hope you're okay. Hopefully we get through all this craziness soon, and in the next couple of months we'll maybe be on the road to recovery. Maybe we're on the road to recovery now, hopefully. All right. Well, take care. We will talk to you soon.